August 1943. The skies above Europe were a deadly battleground, swarming with enemy fighters, dark clouds of anti-aircraft fire, and the deafening roar of engines. In the midst of this chaos, one plane, Ye Olde Pub, cut through the air, carried with it the weight of not just one crew's survival, but the hope of thousands of men waiting on the ground for the bombs to fall. But for the men of Ye Olde Pub, survival was never guaranteed. For these airmen, 50 missions, 50 grueling, terrifying missions, seemed like an impossible dream. And yet, against all odds, they did what few others could. They lived. This is their story. The story of the crew that refused to give up, no matter how grim the skies above or how dark the hours of battle became. These men were part of the 8th Air Force, the hardest-hitting Air Force in history. But it wasn't just the missions that made them legendary. It was how they flew them, how they stood shoulder to shoulder, knowing that each time they climbed into the belly of Ye Olde Pub, they were gambling with their lives, and how, despite the odds, they survived mission after mission, 50 in total. They were among the lucky few to make it out alive. But it wasn't luck. It was bravery. And it was the unbreakable bond they shared that kept them alive when every instinct told them to give up. The year was 1943. Nazi Germany's air defenses were a deadly force, and Allied bombers, like the B-17 Flying Fortress, had become the tip of the spear in the war effort. They were the ones who carried the fight deep into enemy territory, targeting vital infrastructure, factories, and military installations. The idea was simple. Hit the heart of the enemy's war machine where it hurt most. But for the men of Ye Olde Pub, the danger was all too real. Their B-17 was no mere aircraft. It was a fortress, a mechanical giant built to survive the unforgiving skies, loaded with 8.50 caliber machine guns, and enough bomb payload to change the course of the war. Yet, despite its reputation, Ye Olde Pub wasn't invincible. Every mission was a roll of the dice. Each run over enemy territory brought them closer to the brink. The moment their engines roared to life, they knew what they were getting into. And it wasn't just enemy fire they faced. It was the terrifying pressure of knowing they might not come home that day. The crew's first mission? A baptism by fire. On their first raid, the crew of Ye Olde Pub was assigned to bomb a heavily defended target in Nazi-occupied France. Their plane was brand new, their mission untested. The skies were alive with enemy aircraft, Luftwaffe fighters diving in from all directions, flak cannons tearing through the air around them. The crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and eager young men, quickly realized just how real the danger was. One of the crew members, Staff Sergeant Tom Johnson, remembered that first mission like it was yesterday. "We were just a bunch of kids who'd barely flown a mission before," he recalled, "but we knew what had to be done." The moment they reached the target, they were greeted with a hellstorm of fire. Flak shredded the plane's tail, knocking out some of the aircraft's crucial systems. The plane veered off course, throwing the crew into a frenzy, but they kept flying. They had no choice. For the next few minutes, Ye Olde Pub seemed destined to plummet from the sky. But the crew, trained to work together like a single, unbreakable unit, fought through the chaos. The bombardier, Lieutenant Bill Reynolds, held steady as the plane shook violently. The waist gunners, Corporal Joe Adams and Sergeant Charlie Daniels, fired back at enemy fighters, their weapons singing as the sound of cannon fire filled the cabin. Somehow, through sheer grit, the crew made it back. The mission was a success. The bomber, damaged but intact, landed at the airfield, and the men walked away, their faces smeared with sweat and blood, but alive. For the crew of Ye Olde Pub, this would become a pattern. They would face death again and again, and yet somehow they survived. And as they racked up mission after mission, they became known across the airfields as the Hard Luck Crew, a name born not from bad fortune, but from the incredible odds they faced and overcame time and time again. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about living. Every time they climbed into the cockpit, they did it not just for themselves, but for the man sitting next to them. They flew with purpose. Every bomb dropped, every dogfight survived, was for their brothers in arms. And despite the dangers, they became legends, not because they were lucky, but because they refused to give in. But the 50th mission, that was the one they never expected. It was August 1943. The final mission loomed, another deep dive into the heart of Germany. But this time, the crew of Ye Olde Pub knew something was different. The stakes had never been higher. The mission was to target a Nazi munitions factory in central Germany. As they soared over enemy territory, the skies began to darken with the roar of German fighters. It was too quiet. They all felt it. Then, like clockwork, the enemy came. German fighters screamed toward them from the clouds. But this time, Ye Olde Pub was ready. The crew was sharper than ever, their survival instincts honed by 49 brutal missions. Gunners fired in perfect unison, hitting one fighter after another, sending the plane spiraling down in flames. But then one fighter, one last desperate enemy plane, appeared. It came at them from behind, too fast for the tail gunners to catch. The bomber shook violently as the German fighter closed in, the sound of cannon fire deafening the crew. The nose was hit first, followed by a deep rumble in the fuselage. They were losing altitude fast. This could be the end. Then, in a stunning act of mercy, another Allied aircraft, a P-51 Mustang, came barreling through the chaos. The Mustang dug toward the enemy fighter with incredible speed, firing its guns. The German fighter was torn apart. Ye Olde Pub was saved. Again, and as the bomber limped home, its engine sputtering, its crew battered but intact, they had only one thought on their minds. They had made it through again. The crew of Ye Olde Pub had made it. 50 missions. 50 grueling, bloody, terrifying missions, and they had survived them all. But in the end, what made them legendary wasn't just their ability to dodge death. It was the way they fought. Together, the brotherhood forged in the skies of Europe would last far beyond the war. The crew stayed close, meeting decades later, recounting stories and laughing about the wildest missions that almost ended their lives. But even as the years passed, one thing remained constant: their bond, their shared experience, and the incredible, unbreakable strength they found in each other. Their story reminds us that, in the darkest of times, it's the strength of those beside us that keeps us alive, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. In the end, the real victory wasn't just in the battles they won. It was in the survival of the human spirit. And for the men of Ye Olde Pub, that spirit carried them home. In the midst of war, when everything seemed lost, they never gave up. And for them, Ye Olde Pub will always stand as a testament to what can be achieved when men stand together.